Today we'll be going crabbing in Netarts Bay. Recently the crabbing has been very good here. Let's hope it holds up for today as Kent baits up the crab trap, puts a little magic formula on it, and casts it over the side to see if some of these little guys will walk into it here in Netarts Bay. Since it is mid-September, the chill of fall is beginning to chill us from the air as the breeze blows over us. But the brown pelicans are in force, as well as the harbor seals. Are a lot of them in the bay laying out on the sandbar. The brown pelicans will take to flight and get down a few feet above the water, and then they just fold their wings and dive right on the fish that they're trying to catch. They have an expanding pouch on the bottom of their bill, so when it takes in water it'll expand, and then they just expel the water and swallow the fish they've caught. It's now time to pull the first pot in. Kent has a pot puller, a rope pulling device on the front of his boat, and so he just holds some tension on it and puts it in gear, and it'll, like magic, pull a pot right up into the boat where we can extract the good crabs out of it that are big enough and hard enough shell. Some brown pelicans are circling around doing their fishing in style. Netarts Bay, even though it isn't a very large bay, it has the reputation of being the cleanest bay in Oregon, and it's because there's no industry on the bay to foul up the water, and it's not a seaport that you could go out of. It is possible to get out of Netarts Bay, but it's too risky to try to get out on the ocean. We'll be running 4 pots out today. That's a plenty. It takes, by the time you get to the end of the 4th one, it's time to go back again, and we're using some chicken parts that we buy in the local supermarket to bait with. It seems to work really well. An old brown pelican's circling around, and a seagull says he'd by far rather have a piece of chicken. It's a lot easier to catch than a fish. We'll circle around and rebait the traps, take the small crabs out. We're catching a lot of crabs today, but most of them are smaller, and so we can only keep the larger males. We're catching a few females too, as the pelicans are diving in the background. The smaller males and the females must be released right away back into the water, where they can go back down to the bottom and crawl around and look for more bait. I just wonder how many times some of those smaller males get a free ride to the surface, and on the way up they can have a little bit of that chicken for their belly. I guess they got to be careful not to eat too much of it and grow too big, and then somebody will measure them and say this one's legal, and the deal's all over for them then. We're moving around from pot to pot, pulling them up, and we're getting a legal crab or so out of every pot, but we have to turn a lot of them loose, and those pots get kind of heavy when they're full of those little crabs. Once the shell is grown around the crab, then the shell will no longer grow, and so they have to shed it off and grow a new one. During this process, the meat in the crabs gets pretty soft and the shell isn't real full. So we check to see that the shell is full on these. It would be a waste to take one that's soft, but it seems like they're pretty full and pretty firm, so they'll make some really good eating. As the morning wears on, it's becoming a little cooler, although the sun's out, but it's still not going to be a very warm day. It's kind of a cool breeze blowing as Kent sorts through the pot and throws the smaller males and females back into the waters of Netarts Bay. Each person that fishes for crab must have a shellfish license, and they have a limit of 12 crabs per person, and you're only allowed to keep the larger males. We aren't catching a whole lot of crabs. If we're real lucky, we'll catch one per pot on each time we pull it up. But that's better than none. And even if we caught no crabs, it's still a beauty of a morning out here. And those big old brown pelicans are circling over and diving into the water just like a torpedo hitting the water. We have to be really careful not to hit a sandbar, since this bay is pretty shallow with just some deeper channels. We try to stay out in the channel, and Kent has a depth finder on his boat, and we try to find a nice sandy bottom that's like at least 10 to 15 or even more feet deep, and then drop the pots on it, and it seems like that might work a little better. And those seagulls are saying, why don't you guys just give up and feed us the bait? We'd be glad to have it, as they swarm around the boats. And a lot of the boats, when they're done fishing, they give their unused bait to the seagulls, and they really seem to appreciate it. The mountains of the Coast Range stand tall in the background as a few brown pelicans circle over, looking for that very special fish which they can dive on and make a big splash. Usually they go in little groups. Sometimes they'll form just a straight little line, making a beeline for where a fish has been spotted. The bay's beginning to get just a little bit choppy as the morning breeze picks up, and there's getting to be a few more people coming in all the time. We were out here pretty much by ourselves at first, but now we have some competition out trying to capture a crab. Since the crabbing's not very good this morning, these other boats seem to think it's pretty good, and so a lot of them came out, but they won't stay very long. That can be a mistake, though. It's just pretty being out here on the water and listening to that ocean water slapping up against the boat and feeling the rock of the bay beneath our feet. Off to the far right of the picture, right where the ocean and the mountain come together, that's called Cape Lookout. And Cape Lookout State Park is there, where I was a park ranger for nearly 10 years, and it was great. The strip of land out front is called the Netarts Sand Spit, and that was all part of our park. And I'd walk down there a lot of times looking for glass balls and things on the beach back in the 1970s, and I found a lot of them. The west wind always had to be blowing before you'd find them. And if I had a screen door, it would rattle when the west wind blows. And when I'd hear that screen door start rattling, I'd get up no matter what time of the day or night it was and go down on the beach and walk that 5 miles of beach and find my glass balls. Sometimes I found so many I could hardly carry them. The first part of the beach wasn't that good for finding them because everybody hunted that part, but when you get down further on the beach, very few people hunted for them there, and there was a few boats would come over from Netarts and get some of the glass balls, but not too much of that went on. The beach combing during the 1970s was very good. I sure collected a bunch of them, and they're quite valuable. They even in Netarts had a beachcombers fair where the beachcombers would make art out of driftwood and different things they found on the beach and display their glass balls that they found. And these glass balls were Japanese fishing floats. Most all of them were Japanese, and they'd lose them off their nets and different other ways they lost them, and it would take them, they figured it took them at least 4 years to drift over here in the Japanese current. We went from one pot to the other till the tide finally changed, and there got to be so many boats there that it was getting kind of crowded, so we decided to go and do something else. As the morning wore on, we're still pulling up plenty of crabs. The only problem, there's just no keepers in them. So we probably won't fish a whole lot longer for them, because it would be nice to catch a few keepers, and besides, there's getting to be kind of a crowd out here, and so we'll just head home. There was a nice keeper. Maybe we'll catch a few more, but it looks like that's about the end of what we're going to catch for today. We've caught enough for a real good crab feed, which will boil them as soon as we get back and have a real nice crab salad. If you're not going to eat all the crabs that you cook, they can be frozen too. You shouldn't leave them sit around fresh too long. It's best to freeze them or something. Although, like everything, when you freeze it, it seems to destroy a little bit of the natural flavor, but it's still okay. The seagulls have realized that we're pulling the pots in, and so they're starting to congregate around us, and they're volunteering to take any of the unused bait that we have, and they'd make good use of it, and they'd be eternally grateful if we'd give them some. But we are going to save it for another time, and we see a few boats starting to come into Netarts Bay now, and a lot of these are oyster boats. Netarts Bay used to never have oysters in it, but now they've developed a way to spawn oysters. They have to heat the water a little because the bay's too cold for them to naturally spawn. And then they put shells in it, and the larvae for the oyster collect on the shells, and then they take the shells back out and put it in the area they've leased for their oyster farm. Kent puts the motor up to full throttle as we head for the dock. This is a real nice boat for going out on the bay. It's wide enough with that tri-hull, and it's very stable for crabbing. It's just a really nice fiberglass boat. As Kent winds it up on the trailer where we can pull it out and come back another time. There's even a nice little dock to walk up on. It's made out of synthetic wood, and so it won't be rotten, but that when the tide's out, it sets at a bit of an angle, so you kind of have to watch yourself a little bit when you're walking up it. And up the concrete boat ramp Kent goes. Well, Kent gives the boat its final strap to hold it on the trailer and pulls a few seaweed off from the trailer. I'm going to go over and take a look and see what the birds are doing. There's plenty of brown pelicans around, and they love to sit on the rocks right at the end of the boat ramp. And there they sit. There's one blue heron with them too. We have to get back to the place where we're staying and get the crabs cooked right away. You shouldn't leave them set very long after they're once caught. They should be cooked immediately and then eaten or else frozen pretty soon.